Good morning and welcome to Connect Daily Bread, where we recognize that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Today's reading is in Acts 24. Here we go. 5 days later, the high priest Ananias went down to Caesarea with some of the elders and a lawyer named Tertullus, and they brought their case against Paul before the governor. When Paul was called in, Tertullus presented his case before Felix. We've enjoyed a long period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms in this nation, everywhere and in every way most excellent, Felix. We acknowledge this with profound gratitude. But in order not to weary you further, I would request that you be kind enough to hear us briefly. We have found this man to be a troublemaker, stirring up riots among the Jews all over the world. He is a ringleader of the Nazarene sect, and even tried to desecrate the temple, so we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to learn the truth about all these charges we are bringing against him. The other Jews joined in the accusation, asserting these things were true. When the governor motioned for him to speak, Paul replied, I know that for a number of years you have judged over this nation, so I gladly make my defense. You can easily verify that no more than 12 days ago I went up to Jerusalem to worship. My accusers did not find me arguing with anyone at the temple or stirring up a crowd in the synagogues or anywhere else in the city. And they cannot prove to you the charges they are now making against me. However, I admit that I worship the God of our ancestors as a follower of the way, which they call a sect. I believe everything that is in accordance with the law, and that is written in the prophets. And I have the same hope in God as these men themselves have, that there will be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. So I strive always to keep my conscience clear before God and man. After an absence of several years, I came to Jerusalem to bring my people gifts for the poor and to present offerings. I was ceremonially clean when they found me in the temple doing this. There was no crowd with me, nor was I involved in any disturbance. But there are some Jews from the province of Asia who ought to be here before you and bring charges if they have anything against me. Or these who are here should state what crime they found in me when I stood before the Sanhedrin, unless it was this one thing I shouted as I stood in their presence. It is concerning the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial before you today. Then Felix, who was well acquainted with the way, adjourned the proceedings. When Lysias, the commander, comes, he said, I will decide your case. He ordered the centurion to keep Paul under guard, but to give him some freedom and permit his friends to take care of his needs. Several days later, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was Jewish. He sent for Paul and listened to him as he spoke about faith in Christ Jesus. As Paul talked about righteousness, self-control, and judgment to come, Felix was afraid and said, That's enough for now. You may leave. When I find it convenient, I will send for you. At the same time, he was hoping that Paul would offer him a bribe. So he sent for him frequently and talked with him. When 2 years had passed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. But because Felix wanted to grant a favor to the Jews, he left Paul in prison. So now Paul's trial begins, and you've got the high priest Ananias coming, a group of the Sanhedrin, a group of these guys coming, and they have a spokesman. They have Tertullus, who's an attorney, and presents the case, and it's really humorous to see the just the brown nosing that's going on. We have enjoyed a long period of peace under you, and your foresight has brought about reforms in this nation. Meanwhile, Rome oppressed Jews viciously, brutally, called them dogs, treated them as such. But here you got this weasel, sucking up to this guy, and then presents his charges against Paul. And then Paul gets his turn to speak, and there's none of that nonsense from Paul. He just succinct gets to it. I know for a number of years you've been a judge over this nation, so I gladly make my defense. He lays it out. He returns to the thing that he said while on trial. Like, man, I didn't do anything wrong. I worship God as a follower of the way. Here's what they think about that. And goes back to, unless it had to do with the hope of the resurrection that I brought out. So Paul ends up getting some freedom there. He's really in a pretty long holding pattern for a decision to be made. They really don't know what to do with him. So he's granted some freedom. Friends can take care of his need. And meanwhile, Meanwhile, Felix will go and talk to him, which is awesome to see. Just the integrity of Paul. Number one, the purpose. He continues to share Christ with anyone and everyone. So he's doing that with Felix. But there's a knowledge that Felix is coming to him hoping for a bribe. And so what Paul does is he preaches to him about judgment. He preaches to him about self-control and righteousness. And then ultimately, so Felix has 2 years pass. Felix is succeeded by a guy named Porcius Festus. But Felix, wanting some favor from the Jews, decides to leave Paul in prison there. And we'll pick up in Acts 24, we'll pick up in Acts 25 tomorrow. But those are my thoughts on Acts 24. Love you guys. Have a great day.